April 17th, 1944, 11:03 p.m., Gunzburg. Phyllis Baker tapped the last key and yanked the power lead free. The Mk3's vacuum tubes still radiated heat. The air carried a faint, scorched metal tang. She did not stand. She stayed crouched on the damp boards of the bell tower and counted to 30, lips moving without sound. 30 seconds was the shortest time the German 5th Radio Monitoring Company needed to complete a full cross-fix with a direction-finding truck. She had deliberately run 30 seconds long enough for the bearings to lock. And she had reused a key sheet, the same page as the previous message. A beginner's error, a textbook beginner's error. Any trained German operator would write in his report, amateur level, likely a novice. That was exactly what she wanted. The Tower of St. Martin's was 14th century stone, abandoned for years, fouled with pigeon droppings and rot. Through a seam in the floorboards she could see nothing, but she pictured it anyway, 3 kilometers away in the woods. A grey-green Opel sedan, loop antenna slowly turning, homing on this tower. The man she wanted should be on his way. 4 hours earlier, at 7 p.m., in the Black Eagle Tavern, Phyllis chose the corner that gave her the door and kept her back protected, just as the instructors insisted. Smoke and curses filled the room. Wounded men shouted about the Eastern Front, about Russian artillery, about cold that felt like knives. Glass struck glass. A gramophone wandered through a folk song, off-key and too loud. She wore a worn, grey-brown dress, shiny at the elbows, with a cheap brooch pinned at the collar. Her hair was pinned into a bun with a dark green silk ribbon, old at the edges but still lustrous. Inside that ribbon was a roll of microfilm, a forged deployment order for the 51st Highland Division, signed in an imitation of one of Montgomery's staff hands, all of it pointing toward Calais. She ordered a beer and barely touched it, turning the glass slowly as if she had nowhere to go and all night to wait. Around 9, the door opened. A man in a grey suit came in. Early 40s, average build, shoulders too tight in the jacket. He bought a beer at the bar, then carried it to a corner seat that let him see the whole tavern and see her. She did not look up. The file photo matched. Erich Giesler, Brandenburg Special Operations, a prize agent, the kind who would write memoirs if he lived long enough. She wiped sweat from her brow, slow, then untied the ribbon from her hair. She laid it on the table, smoothed it out, and traced its edge with absent fingers like a young woman missing someone far away. Then, as if she remembered she was in public, she snatched it up and hid it in her sleeve. Less than 10 seconds. It was enough. In her peripheral vision she saw him set down his beer, his eyes held on her hand for 2 seconds, the way a hunter pauses to confirm a footprint. The tavern owner topped off a drink nearby and glanced at her sleeve. "Pretty ribbon, miss." "My fiancé's," she said, forcing a tired smile. "Nearly lost it." He nodded and moved on. She stayed 20 minutes more, finished the beer she had hardly touched, and left without looking back. At 10:20, she returned to the bell tower. The ground door was worm-eaten oak, the lock rusted but still able to catch. She pushed inside and climbed the stairs. Every step groaned. In the loft, she pulled the transmitter from beneath junk and checked the antenna wire running out through a cracked window, dangling down the tower's shadowed outer wall. She sent her message, with a one-time pad. She should have taken 3 minutes. She dragged it to 3.5 and reused a page. Her palms were slick. The key felt slippery beneath her fingers. She could almost hear the direction-finding operator in the woods marking his bearings. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Done. She had been trained never to do this, never linger on the air, never reuse a page. The whole point of the mistakes was to make the Germans underestimate her, to make the report read like a careless newcomer. But she could not pretend the risk away. Every extra second was a nail hammered into a map. She cut power and counted to 30 again, forcing her breathing to stay level. Then she climbed higher and aimed a homemade periscope at the street below. At 11:45, she saw the Opel idle 3 streets away, exhaust whitening. A man stepped from the passenger side and walked alone toward the tower. The outline of a pistol rode at his waist, a Walther PPK. Her mouth tried to form a cold smile. Instead, she felt herself shake, and she hated it. She kicked the transmitter deeper under the junk and drew the pencil gun from beneath her pillow. A suppressed .22, 1 shot only, but one was enough. The safety was already off. She lay on her side, right hand under the pillow, left hand resting along the edge. The ribbon slipped from her cuff so it lay across her wrist, a deliberate lure. She made her breathing slow and even. 12 breaths a minute, tongue against palate. Eyelids slack, lashes faintly trembling, footsteps below. Light on the stairs, then a pause as the visitor listened for movement. Then the lock turned with almost no sound, a skilled pick, a specialist tool that could open nearly any German-made lock. Silence at the loft door. A flashlight swept her closed eyes, orange through skin, lingering on her face as if weighing her. In her mind, come closer, make it easy, believe it. Steps approached the bed. She smelled rain, tobacco, and Unita cigarettes, Wehrmacht issue. A soft, metallic click, tweezers. Something touched the ribbon. The tweezers pinched silk and began to draw it out. Her mind counted the seconds, 3 to extract, 2 to inspect. Then he leaves. No, too smooth, too easy. If it felt effortless, he would doubt the setup. She rolled slightly, the way a sleeper shifts, bending her left arm to press the ribbon under her. Her lips parted, and she mumbled, thick with sleep. Calais. Cannot withdraw. General Rommel. Orders. German shaped with Latin grammar, the habit of a classicist, the kind an educated officer might use. His breathing stopped. He stood close enough that the air around her seemed to change. She felt him go rigid. The tweezers hovered near her face. 10 seconds. 20. Watching, judging whether she slept or acted. She kept her breathing steady and deep, the rhythm she had practiced in the terror house, where instructors stood over them with flashlights, leaned close enough to smell sweat, and listened for the smallest hitch. The body wanted to tense, the mind wanted to count. She let both urges float past. Then he tried again, not yanking, but prying millimeter by millimeter, easing her arm away from the silk. The rasp of fabric against skin sounded enormous in the stillness. She kept every muscle loose. Sweat pooled in her palms from adrenaline, not heat. The ribbon loosened. He began to withdraw, slow, careful, as if any sudden motion might trigger a trap. Her toes pressed the hidden button beneath the sheet. From the transmitter's speaker came a sudden shriek of static, the kind of fault old tubes made, but in that sealed loft it sounded like an alarm. His breath snapped shut. The tweezers nearly slipped. He spun, ran to the window, and flung it open. Leaves shook outside. She heard a brief scrape of shoe against stone, then the soft thud of landing beyond the wall. Then he was gone, moving fast and silent into the night. Phyllis did not open her eyes. She counted 30, then 60. Nothing. She looked. The loft was empty. Wind pushed loose papers across the floor. Beside her pillow, nothing. The ribbon was gone. Her knees nearly buckled as the adrenaline drained. She had worked for that theft, and now she had to survive it. She pulled out an AW white phosphorus grenade, yanked the pin, and threw it beside the transmitter. Smoke hissed, harsh and biting, filling the loft with a smell that caught the throat. She tore down the antenna wire, 3 twisted strands, and tied it to an iron ring in the beam. She flung the free end out the window. Wrapping her hands in clothing, she gripped and jumped. The wire burned through fabric and flesh as she slid. She tried to break against the damp brick, but her feet skated. The tower wall offered no purchase. The descent became a fall. In the last meters, she dropped hard. Her left leg struck a carved stone spout with a heavy thud. White pain flashed up her spine. She bit through her lip and swallowed the scream, tasting blood. Flame and smoke erupted from the loft window. Patrol boots clattered at the corner. Flashlights swept the tower wall, searching. She dragged herself into the drainage ditch behind the church, waist-deep and dry, packed with rotting leaves and mud. She scattered torn cipher pad scraps into thorn brush and pressed into the muck, breath held, cheek against cold slime. A flashlight swept the rim. Boots passed overhead. "Upstairs!" someone shouted. "Move! Spread out!" Another voice barked. "Lock the street!" One boot stopped a meter away. She could hear the leather creak as weight shifted. Then, it moved on. 15 minutes later, the shouting faded. The patrol voices thinned and disappeared into distance. She lifted her head. The sky was deep blue. Smoke still streamed from the tower. Her palms stuck to her sleeves. Her left leg felt both numb and on fire. She crawled out and limped into the Swabian hills, using walls and hedges until the town fell behind her. She lay hidden for hours, unable to move, not because she lacked the will, but because her body refused the order. From the knee down, her left leg screamed, then went numb. The burns on her palms stuck to cloth. Any shift tore new scabs. She could only turn her head so her mouth stayed above mud and breathe air that smelled of rot and smoke. Near 4 a.m., the last patrol steps faded and the tower's glow died to embers. She crawled 200 meters into brush, tore open the trouser leg, and saw swelling and dark bruising along the calf. No full break, but a crack in the tibia. She bound it tight with cloth torn from her dress, not to heal it, only to stop it shifting. She tested the leg by shifting weight. The pain was immediate, sharp enough to steal breath. She understood then that she would not be running again, not until she made the Germans believe she was already dead. It was a cold, practical thought, and it steadied her better than hope. Her palms were black-red crust with raw pink showing through. Second degree may be worse. When she tried to clench her hand, the world dimmed at the edges. Before daylight, she had to get farther. She found a dead branch for a crutch and limped north, one ugly step at a time, into forest and higher ground. Near dawn, she collapsed among pine roots and leaves, covered herself with branches, and lost consciousness. She woke with the sun already sliding west. Thirst woke her first, then hunger. Her lips were split. Her tongue stuck to her palate. She gnawed a chunk of dark bread she had pocketed at the tavern and licked dew from leaves. On the third day, she reached the hunter's hut, half-collapsed, hidden near a dry stream bed. Under hay lay a hand-cranked radio left by old Klepp, along with sulfur powder wrapped in oiled paper, a rusted pot, and a little cache of matches. She boiled collected rainwater and soaked her hands until the crust softened. The pain made her shake. She bit down on a stick and used a needle taken from her dress to pry the crust open and drain it. Then she dusted the burns with sulfur. On the fourth day, she caught the BBC French broadcast. "The moon is round. It is time to harvest the wheat." 3 times. Her stomach went cold. "The moon is round" was London's phrase. A termination order. Germans monitoring the band would also hear it, and once broken, it meant an agent codenamed Greta was to be executed by her own headquarters. She had always known it would come. It was part of the plan. Still, the words landed like a verdict. From now on, she was hunted by the Germans and condemned by her own side, and she had to keep moving as if that double sentence did not exist. On the 5th day, she moved again, dragging the leg toward the sealed zone northwest of Günzburg. She stole a filthy grey dress from a farmhouse, wrapped her leg and hands with dirty rags, and smeared mud on her face until she looked like a refugee who had slept in ditches. She needed death. Not her real death, a death the Germans would report. April 20th, Hitler's birthday. Patrols would be heavier, men distracted by drink and celebration, and the contradiction of relaxed spirits and tightened security would give her the visibility she needed. At 4 p.m., she appeared at a road junction on the way to Ulm, walking too slowly, lingering in the open, letting herself be noticed. A grey Opel truck turned the corner, a patrol from the 736th Grenadier Regiment. "Halt!" a soldier shouted. She ran, limping hard, forcing speed she did not have. Boots thundered behind her. Bolts snapped. Men shouted for her to stop. She plunged into brush and thumbed the fuse on a phosphorus charge under her clothes. 2 seconds. She threw it into thorn behind her and dove behind a fallen trunk. A dull blast. Fire and white smoke leapt up and made a beacon of the thicket. The patrol scattered, yelling, convinced they had run into a trap. She crawled sideways into a dry drainage channel she had scouted on earlier nights, then into a shallow creek bed, then into pine woods, letting the land swallow her. She kept low until she could no longer hear boots on the road. Only then did she force herself to stand. The patrol rushed in and saw the burning brush. They found a German jacket snagged on the thorns, stolen earlier and planted there, and a broken pencil etched, "Made in England." They pointed at blood on the leaves. "Ambush!" someone shouted. "Call support!" The blood was hers. The leg wound had opened again, but she was already hundreds of meters away, moving on elbows and her good leg until she could stand, then limping north again. By night she was back against a tree, breathing in ragged gulps, sweat cold on her skin. It worked. A report would follow. Suspicious woman fled. Explosive attack, British-made items and blood. Target likely killed or mortally wounded. Identity to be confirmed. That was all she needed them to believe. In a file. British agent, Greta Vogler. Killed while resisting. Identity pending. She was dead. For 10 days she hid in the hills, living on caches Klepp had left in tree hollows. Patrol voices grew more distant. The BBC never said the moon again. The hunt crested and fell. On May 2nd, near midnight, she reached farmland 5 kilometers south of Günzburg. At the end of an embankment lay a mossy concrete drain cover about a meter square. She knocked 3 times, paused, then twice. After 30 seconds, hands pushed up the cover. Klepp was 67, a Württemberg farmer with a face like a dried riverbed. He looked at her once, then held out his hand. She took it and let him pull her down into the sewer darkness. The tunnel was low and narrow. Icy water covered their ankles. The air stank of rot, and rats moved in the dark, scratching and darting. After half an hour, they emerged into a barn. Hay was piled higher than a man. A lantern lit a table with potato soup, hard bread, and a bottle of cider. "Eat," Klepp said. She drank as if she might never drink again. She did not sit upright so much as fold over the bowl, drinking until her throat stopped clawing. Her hands shook from pain and fatigue. Klepp watched without questions, packing tobacco into his pipe with steady fingers, as if a woman arriving out of a sewer at midnight were no stranger than weather. Only when she had eaten did she realize she was crying, silent tears that left tracks through dirt on her cheeks. She wiped them with the back of a bandaged hand and tasted salt and smoke. The soup was salty and thick with bits of meat. The bread softened only when she soaked it. Then she swallowed it in slow, painful bites. When she finished, Klepp said, "Leave before dawn. The cart is outside, under the hay. Go to Ulm. Someone will meet you." She tried to thank him and could not. Her throat was too raw. At the door, back turned, he said, "My son died at Stalingrad. 19. I don't want more people to die." Then he walked out into the night. At 4 a.m., she lay under hay as the cart rolled north. 40 kilometers to Ulm. 6 hours of hoofbeats and rattling wood, the smell of straw filling her nose. At midday, a middle-aged man in work trousers lifted the hay and said, "Come." He led her into a cellar and through a concealed door into a larger room. A bed, a basin of water, clean clothes, and a note. In 3 days, someone would take her to the Swiss border. She washed, changed, lay back, and stared at the ceiling. The leg ached. The burns itched as they crusted. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear tweezers, still feel silk sliding away, still smell tobacco and rain. On May 6th, before dawn, she rode under hay again, west through the Black Forest. At a small stream, the driver stopped and pointed. "That is Switzerland. 100 meters. Someone is waiting." She crossed knee-deep water, one painful step at a time. On the far bank, a man in a black coat stood under a tree. He nodded, said nothing. She did not ask what he was. She only knew she was safe. A month later, she lay in a field hospital in Portsmouth, left leg in plaster, hands wrapped in bandages. Beyond the window, the English Channel flashed grey-blue in weak sun. June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. A nurse burst in shouting, "They've landed! Normandy!" The ward erupted. Men laughed, cried, tried to sit up. Phyllis stared at the ceiling, unmoving, as if her body had not received the news. Across the water came a distant rumble, like thunder. She knew the German 15th Army around Calais was waiting for a landing that would never come, digging and wiring and mining the wrong shore, while the real landings climbed ashore at Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, and Sword. She covered her face with a bandaged hand. Tears soaked the gauze. Not joy, not grief, something harder to name. A week later, an intelligence liaison brought a captured German bulletin, number 123, dated June 20th, 1944. A photograph showed Erich Giesler in crisp uniform, an Iron Cross First Class pinned to his chest. He smiled with pride. The bulletin praised his decisive intelligence on the Allied main effort, buying valuable time for Western Front defenses. "Do you know him?" the liaison asked. "No," she said. After he left, she drew a dark green ribbon from under her pillow. Not the original. That one was in Giesler's pocket somewhere. This was another, identical, kept hidden through the whole escape, and she did not know why she had kept it. On crutches, she went to the patch of wild grass behind the hospital. She struck a match and touched flame to the corner of the ribbon. The silk curled and blackened. Fire crawled along the edge until it became ash. An Allied officer approached, offering a cigarette. "Who was that?" She took it, let him light it, and said, "A good friend. A friend who helped us win the war." He smiled without understanding and walked away. She stood alone, smoking, listening to surf and gulls. The ash was already gone. Her left leg ached under plaster, a steady pulse. The burns on her palms itched beneath gauze. She listened to the surf until her breathing matched it, slow and controlled, the way she had learned to survive a flashlight beam. She remembered an instructor's line, "The perfect infiltration is not going unseen, but letting the enemy believe he saw exactly enough. Then you watch him use your lie to pin a medal on his own chest and walk into history while you leave no name behind." After Normandy, she stayed in hospital 3 more weeks. The cast was changed. The doctor warned the leg would ache in damp weather. New pink flesh grew on her palms. Each day she practiced. Clench, release, until pain became routine. In early July, she was sent to a country house north of London to recover. Really, a transit station for agents returned from enemy territory. They sat at meals and chewed in silence. They smoked at windows facing lawns and birch trees. Cigarettes were rationed, 1 packet a day, so she learned to draw slowly and hold smoke in her mouth until it stung. Each face carried the same blankness, as if something inside had been scooped out and left hollow. In September 1944, a thick dossier arrived, captured German materials from France. She found the award photo again, and an early May assessment stating that reliable source intelligence placed the main Allied landing at Pas-de-Calais and treated Normandy as a feint. Reliable source. She could picture the tweezers, the ribbon, the 2 seconds of watching in the tavern. In October, she was assigned to London to train new recruits. She taught them how to slow their breathing, how to sleep with trembling lashes, how to press a hidden button with their toes. When someone asked if she had truly done these things, she paused and said, "Next question." In May 1945, Germany surrendered. London erupted in streamers and beer and kisses. At an office window, she held a captured archive listing an agent under the name Gimpel. Erich, born Berlin 1910, joined intelligence in 1936, operated for years in the United States, conducted a special mission in 1944, awarded the Iron Cross First Class, captured by American forces in May 1945. She closed the file and put it away. In 1947, she bought a German book from a stall, Confessions of a German Spy, by Erich Giesler. She set it on her bedside table and did not open it. In 1952, sleepless in the rain, leg aching with the old injury, she finally read the chapter on the bell tower. He described the tweezers, the ribbon, and his certainty that she had known nothing. He wrote, It was the peak of my career. I completed the entire operation less than half a meter from her, and she knew nothing. She closed the book and stared at the ceiling until dawn. In 1957, she resigned and moved to a small seaside town, a cottage less than 200 meters from the water. She walked the beach, watched gulls, and collected shells, as if she were teaching herself how to be ordinary. When neighbors asked about her past, she said, "Before the war, I was a teacher." In 1970, a young history student came, chasing the declassified name Greta Vogler. A British agent declared defected and executed in 1944. Phyllis poured tea and said, "I have never heard that name." In 1995, 80 years old and walking with 2 canes, she asked her caregiver to take her to the sea on April 17th. The water was grey-blue, as it had been in Portsmouth. From her pocket she took a new dark green ribbon, clenched it, then opened her hand and watched it glitter in the wind. "What is that?" the caregiver asked. "An old friend," Phyllis said, and folded it away. In 2003, she died in her sleep. Right hand under the pillow, left hand along the edge, face calm with the faintest trace of a smile. Under the pillow, the caregiver found a dark green ribbon and a worn German book. One page was dog-eared, a passage lightly marked in pencil, the sentence about the peak of a career, the half-meter, the woman who knew nothing. The caregiver could not read German and did not understand. She boxed the ribbon and the book and sent them to distant relatives. The next spring, a small grey gravestone appeared in the town cemetery facing the sea. Phyllis Baker, 1917 to 2003, she once lived inside a secret. Every year on April the 17th, someone laid a dark green silk ribbon at its base. The caregiver did it. She could not say why. She only felt the old woman would have liked it. That was reason enough for her.